in with this Fox News alert. The devastation from Hurricane Helene is more surreal than ever because the time that has passed. The death toll is now climbing above 220 people. It's expected to grow as hundreds of people are still missing in areas that are so tough to get to. And that means that they're cut off from the life-saving things that they need. This is the deadliest storm to hit the mainland U.S. since Hurricane Katrina. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. The more our cameras can get in and show you this, and hopefully the more that people can get some of the help that they need, what they're dealing with becomes really clear. Tragic scenes from decimated communities are now in full view. President Biden has spent the last 2 days visiting hard-hit areas, and he said this about the people in the middle of all of that. Watch it.
What do the states in the storm zone need, Mr. President?
Sorry?
What do the states in the storm zone, what do they need after what you saw today?
Oh, in the storm zone?
Yes, sir.
I'm wondering what storm you're talking about. They're getting everything they need. And they're very happy across the board.
What is he talking about that they're happy? What does he mean that they're getting everything that they need? What does he mean he doesn't know which storm we're talking about when we ask about Hurricane Helene? What is going on? People on the ground certainly don't understand what he's talking about because their reality is hell. The New York Post is reporting Hurricane Helene victims in North Carolina in particular are fending for themselves as response from the Biden-Harris FEMA overwhelms. And people in those areas are not staying quiet.
I've lived here my entire life. I grew up, saw Hurricane Hugo, Fran, Floyd, the list goes on. Nothing compares to what has happened out there. We're pulling 15, 19-hour days, and I've seen two FEMA officials, no trucks, no trailers, no camp. That's really the truth right now, and I just cannot, I feel like I'm living in an alternate universe. I don't understand where our government is.
I think the one thing that stands out the most is even after it had been several days since it had happened, there still was no aid here at all. And it's all community-based, essentially.
It's too late. I mean, they took too long. It took them 5 days to get here. It's disgraceful. I mean, they keep saying we the people. No, there is no we the people. It's them versus us. So they're not for us.
Madison Scarpino is in North Carolina, about 10 miles from Asheville, Madison.
Harris, the majority of those deaths that you mentioned at the top of the show are here in North Carolina. We're in Swannanoa right now, one of the hardest hit areas. People who live here are describing some of this town as a war zone or apocalyptic. And when you look around, you can see why. Right now, we're standing on a lot that was home to about 4 or 5 mobile homes. We actually talked to the owner of the lot who was just there. He tells us that thankfully he got in touch with everyone who lives here when the floodwaters started coming up and they all got out safe. But he hasn't talked to them since they got out. And he tells us that, quite frankly, they don't have a lot of money and he doesn't know how they're going to recover from this. And this is one of the countless just terrifying and devastating stories we're hearing from people who live here. And when it comes to that federal help, we are hearing from residents that they have seen some FEMA people on the ground. Some people tell us that they haven't heard from them or seen them themselves yet, but another person tells us that they have already applied for that federal aid, but they're not relying on that. When it comes to people cleaning up here, right now it's majority neighbors helping neighbors. Here's what one guy had to say.
The real heroes of this community are actually the community itself. It takes so long to get paper signed in Washington. We've got boots on the ground here, actually, the neighbors helping neighbors. It doesn't matter about anything but other than help. I mean, dump trucks going up, people bringing their excavators, getting people's driveways cleared out, getting mud cleaned up, getting our infrastructure back. These guys have worked since the storm started.
And Harris, right now, the #1 need remains clean water. And the thing about some of these mountain communities, well water is very common, but even if people still have well water right now, they're being told not to drink it or use it because of the contamination. But we're going to be on the ground here all day and throughout the next few days, keeping you updated with everything. Back to you.
Thank you very much. Great reporting there. I want to bring in now a voice that we hear from during the storm, Ron DeSantis, Republican governor of Florida, where, of course, the effects of Hurricane Helene were hit first. His state took it first. And you're feeling it too, Governor. I want to start, though, and I have to, because it just seems surreal that the President of the United States would say that anyone is happy and that they have enough at this point, and that he was confused about which storm we mean. Your reaction?
Well, Harris, we obviously got the initial impacts of the storm. It was a Category 4 storm, but we prepared for it. We had tens of thousands of utility workers ready to go. We were able to facilitate 2.4 million power restorations in record time after a major hurricane. But we also, between state and local, conducted thousands of rescue missions as soon as the storm happened. So then we were in a situation where we got through Friday of last week, come in Saturday morning, and we didn't have a demand for rescue, but you saw in Western North Carolina, you saw people that were very desperate. So I authorized air assets, National Guard, State Guard, Highway Patrol to go into Western North Carolina. So it created this odd circumstance that you have people there in Western North Carolina. And look, we've got a lot of Floridians that go there over the summer, so it wasn't like a random spot on the map for us. That's an important part of our state people where they go. But you have a situation where the first people that they come in contact with is some state guard unit from Florida and not any of the federal assets. So the reality is I don't think the federal assets were marshaled very quickly at all. But the lesson that I think people should take from this is one we learned in Florida long ago. We don't rely on FEMA to do any of that type of activity. We rely on FEMA to basically be a bank account. There's federal programs in place. We get our people qualified for individual assistance, reimbursement for some of the debris. But we take the matters into our own hands for the preparation and the rescue and response. And I just think it's sad that this has come to it. But I've got a lot of people up there now working. They're bringing food in. They're taking people back to safety. It is a really, really dire situation up there in the mountains. And the people that have been up there before, and I've been up there a number of times since I've been governor, and it's beautiful, but it is rugged. And if roads start blowing out or failing, you can't reach some of these communities unless you're putting in air assets, which we have been willing to do.
And look, part of that beauty is because it is so inaccessible. It is preserved, the nature there, and I've seen it. I lived in that state more than once in my lifetime, North Carolina in particular. It is. But where the president was, and I want, you've shown so much leadership, and your experience with the storm type of situation really shines. And you see Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia, and you see others. You're having to do a lot of this on your own. So when you hear the President of the United States say that he doesn't, first of all, know which storm we're talking about as journalists when we ask about it, and then also that people are happy with what he's done, what is your reaction, Governor?
Well, I can tell you in Western North Carolina, the reports I'm getting, that's just not true. I mean, our guys are out there. People are desperate. They're very thankful that you have Florida assets that are there. I mean, we've got our Department of Transportation is up there. We brought 7,500 feet of temporary bridges. We're going to help repair bridges up there. Federal government's not doing any of that. But the reality is you just cannot, the federal bureaucracy, it's just not going to do the trick in these situations. And so we were able to do it. Interesting, Harris, in Florida. We conducted thousands of rescue missions as soon as the storm hit, a lot of it local, some joint, state and local, and other state. And all of those missions were successful. We did have fatalities, but the people that were in dire straits that needed help, they got rescued and brought to safety.
And now you're able to help other states. I mean, and they really need it. I was on the radio with the station this morning for quite some time in North Carolina, and Governor, that it's grim. And they're finding their own way, not only to sustain, but to deal with the loss of life and to discover that on their own. I mean, it is heartbreaking. Look, this had a second layer until it seemed like late yesterday, and there was a collision point, again, with you at the center of it, unleashing the National Guard on a situation that really is the federal government's responsibility. A reprieve, at least for now. Dozens of ports during the port strike, which ended overnight, along the east and Gulf coasts, have reopened after the dock workers union reached a tentative deal to suspend its strike. That temporary agreement offers a 62% wage hike over 6 years. The two sides will still have until January 15th to reach a full deal. So I would imagine, Governor, if that doesn't happen, this gives you a little bit of time, and we need that cooling off period. Biden could have done that before, but we're not done with this yet.
Well, Harris, I did an executive order to declare a state of emergency with respect to the ports, because we can't have a situation where they are trying to cripple the economy and by extension cripple the ability of storm victims to be able to have the supplies that they need to be able to rebuild their homes and get back on their feet. So I authorized National Guard to be at our ports. They would have received cargo. They would have done whatever is necessary. Mm-hmm. I'm glad that subsequent to that they decided that this was not a good idea to continue on this work stoppage. But we're going to be ready in January because, yes, we're going to get a lot of stuff done between now and then with respect to the storm. There's going to be a lot more that needs to be done. Mm-hmm. And I don't think you want to put those folks and make them pay the price because of a lack of leadership in Washington. So we were ready to do what needed to be done now. Fortunately, we're not going to have to do that in the short term, but we'll be ready in January as well. We are going to get the things to the people that need them. That should be true in Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and all across the United States.
Tennessee, Virginia, South Carolina, so much. Governor, thank you for joining me in Focus today. And as you point out, Biden will still be in office until January 20th. So when this cooks back up potentially and they have to quiet this port strike deal permanently, hopefully, or what could look like permanence, yeah, the current administration will still have it for a few days. Governor Ron DeSantis, bless you and the states that you're helping, and of course, Florida. Thank you.
Thank you.